The first sign is not a van outside your building. It is your old name appearing on a screen that should not know it. You are standing in a station full of tired strangers when the departures board freezes for half a second, flickers, and reflects the face the system still thinks belongs to you. Not the face you use now. The one you buried. That is when you understand the worst part. They are not searching for where you are. They are rebuilding who you used to be. By the time the board refreshes, the train is already arriving and everyone around you is still checking their phones like nothing happened. But your pulse changes because you recognize the architecture of a hunt. It is quiet first. Polite first. Invisible first. The government does not kick down the door when it wants someone like you. It lets systems lean toward you until the whole world starts feeling slightly prearranged. You are not trying to become the most difficult person in the country to locate. You were trying to confirm whether a file existed. Not a military secret. Not a launch code. A file with your dead name on it, attached to an internal contractor portal that was supposed to handle identity cleanup after protected cases, sealed investigations, and people who were meant to disappear from every ordinary database. You found the file because someone left a process running longer than they should have. You found the label because somebody higher up believed labels did not matter if access looked temporary. And the label told you enough. Locate despite deletion. Escalate if pattern reappears. You closed the screen immediately. You did not copy it. You did not need to. Once you see a sentence like that attached to your own erased identity, the sentence copies itself into you. You spend the next hour proving to yourself it could still be a misunderstanding. A training artifact. A stale archive. A dead contractor database nobody cleaned. Then your landlord emails about a maintenance visit you did not request. Then your bank asks you to reconfirm a phone number you retired 2 years ago. Then a delivery app sends a notification to an address you never gave them. And suddenly every boring service around you feels coordinated. That is when fear becomes mathematics. People think a government search begins with agents. It does not. It begins with mismatch. A camera that thinks your jawline belongs to an older photo. A transit record that notices a payment pattern that should have ended. A tax archive that still carries a spelling variation of your first name. A private data broker that sold location fragments to a contractor who sold them again to an analyst who has never seen your face but has already assigned you a probability score. Most people believe the system is one machine. It is not. It is a stack of arguments. One database says you are inactive. Another says you are deceased. Another says you are a risk marker attached to sealed paperwork. Another says you are probably nothing at all. Your advantage is not that you are invisible. Your advantage is that their machines disagree about what kind of ghost you are. You leave the apartment before sunrise with one bag and half the things you think matter. By noon you realize half of those things are memories pretending to be tools. The city changes when you know a system is leaning toward you. Every camera becomes a question. Every checkout counter becomes a timestamp. Every friend becomes a future apology. You stop thinking in places. You start thinking in exposures. Bright lobby, bad. Routine ride, bad. Usual coffee shop, bad. Anyone who calls you by the old nickname, worst of all. What makes you dangerous to them is not raw technical skill. It is context. You know how institutions lie to themselves about certainty. You know how vendors oversell confidence. You know how search systems pretend correlation is fate. So you stop behaving like a person being chased. You behave like a contradiction. And contradictions are expensive to process. The phrase sounds dramatic. The hacker the government cannot find. But the truth is uglier than that. They cannot find you because they outsourced too much. One team watches border data. One team buys commercial device signals. One team scores social connections. One team handles sealed requests they are not supposed to discuss. And all of them are selling confidence upward to people who only want clean answers. You live in the dirty space between their clean answers. They flag one apartment, then arrive after you are gone. They lean on one old contact, only to learn he knows a version of you that no longer exists. They watch one bus station while you are being misidentified 3 districts away as a man who only shares your height and haircut. The more aggressive they get, the more noise they create. The more noise they create, the easier it becomes to see the outline of the machine itself. And that outline is what really terrifies you. Because the hunt is not built around one dangerous person. It is built around the idea that nobody should be able to leave the record once the record decides they matter. At first you think the file is about you. Then you realize you are only the proof. The real story is the list attached to the same internal environment. Names hidden. Cases abstracted. Status markers with words like reactivated, proximity event, family adjacency, silent flag. You are not looking at a manhunt. You are looking at a retention system for people who were supposed to be erased. Protected witnesses. Informants. Contract assets. People cut loose after doing exactly what the state asked them to do. Somebody built a machine that keeps watching them after the paperwork says stop. And because that machine exists, everybody inside it is now one policy change away from becoming searchable again. You do not need to leak anything to understand how bad that is. You only need to survive long enough to stay outside the net. The people you fear most are not the ones with flags or badges. They are the ones with project managers. The ones with expense accounts, subcontractors, dashboards, key performance targets, and cheerful language for ugly work. They are the reason the search never feels dramatic. A government investigator has rules. A private intelligence vendor has deliverables. A vendor can call the hunt research. A broker can call it enrichment. A risk platform can call it safety maintenance. And by the time those phrases climb high enough into the bureaucracy, nobody has to say out loud that they are rebuilding a person who was never supposed to be rebuilt. That is why you keep moving. Not because you think there is one elite team one street behind you. Because there are 100 bored people at 100 desks being paid to reduce the uncertainty you represent. There is a fantasy version of this life where disappearing feels powerful. It does not. It feels small. You stop hearing your own name. You stop telling stories that begin before this month. You stop keeping objects that prove continuity. A normal person uses the world to remember who they are. You start using the world to forget what can be connected. There are nights when you wake up convinced the worst thing that could happen is not capture. It is being corrected. Having some analyst merge enough records to decide the old file was right all along. Having one clean profile assembled from 1,000 dirty guesses. Because once the system resolves you back into one coherent person, every door in the country becomes capable of agreeing with every other door. That is what you are really fighting. Consensus. They almost find you through kindness. Not yours. Someone else's. A woman at a late-night clinic asks too softly whether you have family nearby. A clerk at a motel lingers 1 second too long on the form. A man in a food line recognizes the accent you have been flattening for months and smiles like he almost knows from where. The machine is always trying to reassemble you through ordinary human warmth. That is the sickest part of it. The state builds the infrastructure. But people complete the pattern. One remembered phrase. One familiar face. One old habit brought back by exhaustion. You survive because each time the past tries to return, you cut the moment short and keep walking. The people running the search still imagine you like a target on a board. A location. A device. A body moving through geography. But you stopped being a body in the system weeks ago. Now you are a maintenance failure. A contradiction the machine keeps spending money to resolve. They cannot find you because they are searching for a stable profile and all they have built is a profitable confusion. Every layer added to find you creates another layer that can be sold, subcontracted, audited, and renewed. At some point you realize the hunt would rather continue than succeed. Success closes budgets. Uncertainty feeds them. And nobody invoices better than a system allowed to call its own failure an active investigation. Months later, a new photograph of you circulates through rooms you will never see. In one version you are thinner. In one version you have a beard. In one version you are already dead. In one version you crossed a border you have never touched. In one version you are standing exactly where you are now. That is when you finally understand why they cannot find you. Not because you are stronger than the government. Not because you are faster than the machine. Because the machine was trained to believe every person can be reduced to one final answer. And you are what happens when that answer never arrives. You are not off the grid. You are inside its blind spot. A man erased badly enough to survive. A contradiction expensive enough to keep alive. The hacker the government cannot find is not hiding in some perfect bunker. He is walking through the space between their databases while they argue over which version of him is real. And as long as they keep arguing, you keep moving.